Soraya, how's it going?
All right. How about you?
All right. All right. It's a tough weekend for us. It's going to be an emotional weekend, but it's all death and life this weekend for us. So it's a
I'm
tough one.
telling you, these are wild times.
Yeah. Yeah. So funeral today. And tomorrow we're doing a co-ed baby shower for our 12th grandchild. So
Isn't that something?
yeah, she's due any day now. Emma Noel. So she just dropped and she flipped. So she's ready to head out the exit door. So
Holy
yeah.
moly.
So we've been telling our daughter-in-law, just wait till after the baby shower. So anytime after Sunday, let Emma loose.
Well, you need to tell Emma that. You need to get real close to her tummy and say, wait.
Yes. So today we'll be talking about a band that's often connected with Paisley Underground for some reason.
Called in a lot of places they refer to this band as desert psychedelia.
I think that's very adequate. Yeah, I like that description. Yeah. So the band is Thin White Rope, and today we'll be talking to their lead guitar player, Roger Kunkel. Kunkel, I think that's how you pronounce his name. So Roger was with the band for pretty much the whole decade of their existence. So early 80s to early 90s. So I'm looking forward to talking to Roger. And I think we might need a little bit of help asking some questions.
We have an additional host who's really useful in these situations.
He's all right.
He's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Ronnie Barnett.
Yes. So
we're going to have our friend Ronnie Barnett join us, and what looks to be a really interesting discussion with Roger. So let's get started. Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff.
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme,
a podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tunes.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, a groovear.
Let's get groovy. All right, Soraya. So today, as we talked about in our intro, we're very excited because we've been wanting to talk about Thin White Rope for quite a while because, as we mentioned, Thin White Rope comes up in discussions quite a bit. And although we primarily focus on the Paisley Underground, we try to branch off a little bit and talk about music that's related in some way or another. And Thin White Rope is certainly related. Just as a way of introduction, the way that I came to Thin White Rope was actually partially due to the Paisley Underground. Of course, I loved the 3 o'clock, and the first two records were out on Frontier. So when I was flipping through records in my independent section, which was the section I would always go to at Lou's Records in Encinitas, California, I came across this record right here, Exploring the Axis, and I saw the Frontier label, and I thought, hey, maybe they sound like the 3 o'clock, which they don't at all. But because of that label connection was the reason that I got into them, and I absolutely fell in love. So today we're speaking to Roger, who was the lead guitarist and songwriter and background vocalist for Thin White Rope. So welcome, Roger, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So it was about a decade that the band existed, from the early 80s to the early 90s. And from our understanding, the band started off with Guy and Joseph Becker, who we've talked to his sister Nan on the show and her connection with game theory. So we understand that those two guys put out an ad. Is that correct? And you answered the ad, and that's how you joined the band?
Well, I think it was, there's a music store in Sacramento called Skip's Music. So I was living in Sacramento at the time.
Okay.
I went to high school in Vacaville, which is not far from here, and went to college in Sacramento. And I was just, wanting to get into a band. I wasn't even that interested in going to college at first. I just wanted to go somewhere and was interested in getting bands. So they had, back then they had a bulletin board at the music shop, and and instrument shop, and people would put up little adverts for trying to put a band together. And usually, you'd list the influences, who you're into and stuff, and so yeah, I put up something there, and I think Joe had put something up, or Kevin, or I forget if it was Joe or Kevin. I think it was Kevin State of Horror that I first contacted, and he told me that he had spoken to somebody, a drummer and a singer, guitar player, who was Guy, and so we got together, and originally we practiced at Kevin's house in Sacramento. So we were kind of a Sacramento Davis combination to start. Yeah.
Just to go back a little before that, Roger, were you in bands in high school? I mean,
I was. I had a band in high school that was mostly like hard rock covers and stuff, and then we'd play at the local parties and dances and things like that, and actually a little bit in Sacramento and Davis, and we were like 16, and that band, I'd mentioned in a thread earlier that Steve Packenham, who ended up in True West for a while, was the drummer of that band.
Oh wow! And what was the name of this band? And what were the cover songs you were playing? Just some of them.
The band was called Amperage. And
Nice.
So, and we started out with like the typical hard rock, cover material that kids are still playing today. I noticed, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and Black Sabbath, and stuff like that. But then at the same time, like half of the band was discovering punk rock, and the other half was like leaning towards metal. And so we were this weird combination where we'd play Ramones and Black Sabbath back to back. I guess maybe that's not so weird, but and we actually had a few original tunes too. And we're pretty decent, high school band. But then things fell apart because of the artistic differences within the group.
Nice. So I got to ask, when Thin White Rope, when you first met Guy, I mean, Guy, let's face it, has a very distinctive vocal style. Was the Thin White Rope sound kind of there from the beginning, or did that develop? Did he develop his vocal style over a little bit there?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll back up and say that, Guy was really, the primary songwriter, of Thin White Rope. The songwriting credits on the records are just sort of like for, some musical contributions. Thin White Rope was essentially the Guy Kaiser band, for the most part. So when we first started practicing, Joe said I play with this guy named Guy that writes songs and stuff, and so we started playing some of his songs. And at first I was a little taken aback because he sang in this like really like low, wavery, deep voice, and it took a while to develop to what you hear on the records. And I remember doing the first demo, and and there's that awkward thing where the singer has got the headphones on and you just hear the singing.
Yes.
His voice was kind of bizarre, really, but it didn't take long before it was obvious that this was a person who was, very original, very, gifted songwriter, and had, if anything, a unique voice. And so that works. And eventually over time, he sort of physically developed his voice into this bigger, gravelly thing, that could scream and scare people.
Yeah, you can kind of hear the development on that first album, because like I'd say half the album is kind of, dare I say, pop songs, and then half is kind of the Thin White Rope, kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, Thin White Rope. I mean, no band sounds like Thin White Rope, let's face it.
his voice was emerging.
Yeah.
Soraya, what was the definition that, or the description that you often hear?
Okay, so that what, the desert psychedelia, or the one that it says thin, this is from an article from 2016. Thin white rope were too harsh to be labeled as jangle, too loud for the emerging alternative country movement, and too dark to fit into the flowery Paisley underground.
Yeah.
But Guy's voice is unique, but the sound, Ronnie, you hit it on the nose. No band sounds like Thin White Rope.
No, not only vocally, I think musically as well. There's like a sinister feel, or a dark feel, but still pop. It's like a dark pop, I guess, is how I would describe it. But yeah, there's nobody sounds like.
Well, we'll get to the guitar interplay, Roger. I mean, with you and Guy,
right.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't want to mention television, but I'm sure you got television comparisons because you guys play off each other.
Yeah.
And did that just kind of happen naturally, or was it a conscious effort to make it happen?
Well, I think we both well, television was an influence for sure. We had some common influences going into it. Like we both liked old blues and country music. I was kind of raised, my parents listened to country music, sort of the slick country music of the 1960s, like Patsy Cline and Jim Reeves and stuff like that. But I discovered some Chet Atkins records when I was a kid, and that's what got me really started on guitar. And then, I was in the right age where the whole hard rock, thing happened with heavy guitar sounds. And so I was really into, heavy distorted fuzz tone guitar and stuff like that. And of course, most kids playing guitar at that time, I guess, were. So I don't know, did it start right away? Kind of. Guy was doing some some unorthodox stuff. He had that Ovation Breadwinner guitar, and he was like plugged into this solid state Marshall amp with I forget what fuzz tone he was using at the time. And it took a while we both wanted to play lead guitar, of course. And I think at first I tried to just do like interesting rhythmic stuff, rhythm guitar parts and stuff, and over time it sort of evolved into this, try to orchestrate, more guitars together and stuff. And then in the later years, we were really getting into, harmonizing and doing feedback simultaneously and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think just we like that sound, and television was an influence. But we did more of the long sustained singing feedback, things like that. So we both sort of like strategized on the blending of the guitars. Like we even so much as to choosing amplifiers that would complement each other. Like I typically used a Fender amp, and Guy would use a Marshall. We were both playing Fender guitars, but just tried to make sure that the guitars created a spacious combined sound. But once in a while, stuck to the rhythm and lead formula. That's typical.
Right. I was lucky enough to see you guys like 4 or 5 times, and live. Of course, you can hear that on the records, but live, it was really special and unbelievable to watch, Roger. So,
Ronnie, were those shows in Texas or here in California?
Yeah, I saw the band twice in Texas at a club called Fitzgerald's. I'm from Houston, and then
that place was great.
Yeah, it's they tore that down, Roger. That old house, it had been there for 100 years. They tore it down, but
yeah, and we would stay. We had Thanksgiving there once. It was great.
Oh yeah, they had behind the band house.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then when I first moved to California, '89, I saw you with American Music Club at Bogart's and Club Lingerie. That was right when the RCA deal happened, I believe. So
sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to the major label thing, but
I have a question about the band's name. So it's well known that the band's name was from the William S. Burroughs book Naked Lunch and the description of the male ejaculate. So is that something that the whole bit, Ronnie, you look surprised?
Yeah, I didn't say it. Yeah, go ahead.
But so did the entire band agree to that name, or?
Well, we had to agree to it at some point, but yeah, it was a friend of the band suggested it, and we were all crazy about Bill Burroughs at the time, and so I can't think of if there were many alternatives in play. It's kind of it turned out to be awkward, and in more ways than one. Like on our first tour, like it seemed like almost every other night the club would get it wrong and write it as Thin White Line, some reference to cocaine or something.
An entirely different thing.
Yeah. And then it's always awkward when like when your parents start reading reviews and stuff, and see that. But
well, yeah, and every interview is asking, "Where'd you get the band name?" Or yeah.
Yeah, and it's like on Apple Music, it's like the first thing they say in the description of the band. So it's hard to get away from it. Yeah. But metaphorically, it was a strong metaphor for the tenuous connections that we form between people and the consequences of such connections, and intended or otherwise.
Yeah. And in and of itself, it just flows nicely. I mean, regardless of where it came from, or,
so to speak. Yeah.
Ronnie, I'm trying to get off of that.
Roger, how does Frontier Records find you guys?
Well, that was interesting. So let's see, it must have been 83 or so when we were all excited, thinking we were going to jump into this cool alternative music scene, and we knew that some bands were there was a guy who was somehow involved with Game Theory too, Scott Vanderbilt. I think he was their manager or something at the time. But, he offered to manage the band, and he had contacts at Enigma and a couple other, indie labels. And we did a demo in town here in Davis with the intention of it being an album. And he was shopping that to labels. But at some point, somebody in England got a copy of the demo, and it might have been Russ, actually. It might have been somebody told me that they had slipped a cassette to somebody when they were in London. I think that True West was being courted by Island Records at the time, and I think Russ did us the favor of slipping a demo to someone, and it got to Bucket Full of Brains, that fanzine, and they really liked that tape, and they did a big write-up on Thin White Rope, and this was before we were signed or had a record out.
Wow.
And that got back to Lisa. So so the demo went from Davis to London and back to LA. And wow. Lisa really liked the demo. And at the time, she was trying to work out a deal with Island Records, a distribution deal with Frontier and Island Records. And Island Records was hot on, part of the True West thing plays into this, because they were interested in West Coast American neo-psychedelic bands. Like this was this was on the horizon as a big wave, they were thinking, and this was going to be really cool. And so they identified a few bands they were interested in, and the idea was that they'd be signed to Frontier. But licensed to Island. And so Lisa got a hold of us and said, we want to sign you. And she had to buy out, because we had already signed a management contract with Scott, and she had to buy that out. But she had money. She was willing to spend money because Island was throwing a lot of money around, I guess. So it was us and the Long Riders and
Rain Parade.
I don't know, maybe Rain Parade. Yeah, it was part of it. But there's like this few bands that were going to be part of this deal. And so that's why the first record we made was done in an expensive professional studio, because there was money. But then in the end, Island pulled out of that deal and went with Long Riders only, I think. And so Lisa got held, ended up having to pay the bill for all this stuff. Or eventually we did, I guess. But yeah, so it was all kind of a whirlwind and roundabout strangeness that we finally ended up getting our first album out on Frontier.
Not like a passion, not like the Chisholm Trail. Not like those young boys who are out looking for thrills. No yellow barroom, no thrills at all. Just old men losing time and looking for gold.
Okay. Yeah, I'd noticed that about the first record, like mixed it Ocean Way and
Yeah, it was actually engineered by Dennis Dragon, famously Daryl Dragon, the captain's brother,
yes.
the captain and Tennille.
So there's a Captain and Tennille Thin White Rope connection.
Yeah,
There you go.
and he tragically passed away not too long ago. I noticed an article about. And Jeff Irick, both of those guys were, if you remember, the Surf Punks,
Yes.
with this LA sort of surfer dude punk band. Dennis Dragon lived in this house in Malibu that he had a mobile set up in this truck parked outside the house, and then in the basement was this studio space.
Wow.
And that's where we recorded that first album. And it was all like fantastic to us because we had just been used to, typical, local scene and recording on crappy 8 tracks and stuff. And so, yeah, that record was an experience. When we were done with it, we didn't like it because it didn't sound like we sounded live.
Mhm.
Oh, how was it different?
Well, I don't know, just the big production on everything, and we were a little stilted in our playing and such. It felt a little stiff. It didn't sound as loose and free flowing as we were used to. But in retrospect, I think it's an interesting sounding record.
Yeah. Well, the next record, Moonhead, is where all that came together, right?
Yeah, Moonhead was where. So with Moonhead we went to this guy Paul McKenna, who was an engineer for A&M Records, had his own studio, and he'd take on small projects, indie projects, if he liked the band or whatever. And it was also super nice little studio though, but we were much more like comfortable and involved in the production and stuff on that one, and the Moonhead sounded like we wanted to sound.
Yeah. And you toured a lot between records, right? I mean, you like I said, I saw you a couple times. You guys seem to tour a whole lot during these Frontier years.
Well, the first tour, was kind of infamous, and it was a combined, like, Lisa. Once again, there were other players involved, and so Spin Radio Underground, from Spin Magazine. Andrea Anthol, she was like really high on the band and other Frontier acts and stuff, and so our first tour was semi-sponsored by Spin Magazine, and it was 3 bands at once. It was us and the Pontiac Brothers and Naked Prey, and it was dubbed the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly tour.
That's right. We did hear about that. Right.
And we rotated headliner, but and it was all well and good, because it was like, it was cool that Spin Magazine was advertising it and stuff, and that got us booked into larger places than we should have been booked into, because nobody had heard of these bands before. So people didn't flock to the clubs just because Spin Magazine says check out this new tour. And so we had some bad nights, like showing up at First Avenue in Minneapolis to a completely empty house.
Oh,
yeah. It's a big
where
room.
we should have been.
Yeah.
We should have been in the side street entry,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Instead of the big room. And we'd be lucky to be there even. In fact, the next time we came through, we were in the side street entry. And then in Boston, they booked us in some weird big place, and Billy Gibbons was the only guy who showed up.
Oh, wow.
Just out of coincidental, but they canceled the show. We didn't play it. We didn't get to play for Billy Gibbons. But yeah, this limo shows up, and it turns out ZZ Top's playing in town, and he's like out on the town to see what's happening. But yeah, they canceled the show because nobody showed up.
Wow.
And so most of our shows were on that first tour some of them were fun, some were disastrous, and but it was a interesting trip. So that was like a real tour, 5-week tour or something. But then after Moonhead came out is when we started touring on our own, and yeah, a lot. Yeah, we, especially once we started going to Europe, we were touring like probably 7 months out of the year or so for the next 6 or 7 years.
Nice. We should also mention there's a Spin Records, there's a live Thin White Rope show, like a radio show that exists on vinyl that people should find if they can, because
is that that's the Spin Radio Underground?
Yeah,
pressing?
I have one of those.
Oh, you have that,
Oh
Ronnie?
yeah.
I don't own that.
I
Nice.
encourage people to find it, but good thing Spin was sponsoring that tour, Roger, because those canceled shows, I mean, that would have been a disaster for an independent tour, right?
Oh.
Like, yeah.
It was pack every, well, all of our tours were just shove everything into a van and live on. I remember it was ridiculous because it was set up as if it was a big deal tour. We had laminates,
Nice.
and
Nice.
and there was a tour manager guy, and he told us like we were going to be in big trouble if we traded our laminates for sexual favors. He didn't phrase it like that. And then we each got $7 a day to eat lunch with or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Legit tour.
Yeah.
Roger, you alluded to this earlier, but the title track, Moonhead, you've got a songwriting credit. So, and then we didn't mention Real West on the debut album. You also got a songwriting credit. So is this more of a guy brings in these songs and you add something to it?
Essentially, just, I mean, there's a lot of instrumental. There's a long instrumental section in that song, so it's just sort of a musically developing the tune that Guy would start with. Yeah, I think that tune he had actually had written that tune like years earlier.
Moonhead.
Yeah.
Okay. So the songwriting process was pretty much Guy bringing in the songs to the band, and you guys would work
Yeah.
out your parts. So would
Pretty
he
much.
would he suggest what you should play, or you would come up with your own parts?
Mostly my own. Sometimes he would. At some point, he got himself a 4-track cassette, and so he'd come out of his little, home studio laboratory with a bunch of stuff on there, and I'd be all like, "Oh man, yeah, I think I'd rather invent my own part." But once in a while, there'd be some parts on there. It's like, "Oh, that's like really, freaking cool. I guess I'll play that part." So that would vary too. He's definitely a composer. He's a poet. He's a composer. He's a guitar player. He's a singer. He's like the whole package, and kind of a control freak too. But the whole band would obviously makes an impact, and it would vary from song to song.
Roger, there's a show on YouTube from the Cattle Club, I believe, where Guy is playing naked.
Right. Nice.
What is the story with that? I've always wondered, what is the story with that?
That show was at a warehouse in Davis that we called the Olive Pit, because it's on Olive Drive in Davis. And it was also a rehearsal space for some bands, but we'd have, for a while, we had some shows and parties there. It was it was a bet. It was somebody offered Guy like $40 to play naked, and he took them up on it. So cowboy boots and Telecaster slung down low.
The whole set, the whole.
Yeah,
wow.
The whole set.
Okay.
He's the original naked cowboy.
One thing that's funny about that is that at the time that happened, there was no YouTube.
Yeah.
And YouTube started getting popular in the 90s, I guess. And sure enough, Thin White Rope stuff starts showing up. But that's the first thing that someone posted about Thin White Rope. And for years, or mostly. And so for years, like if you Googled Thin White Rope, that would be the top item, right? So I just thought it was hilarious that 10 years later, if Guy's on a computer and goes to Thin White Rope, he sees himself naked. So it's pretty funny.
So that was just a one-time thing, not something that happened often.
One time, yeah, definitely a one-time thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't become his thing. Yeah.
There's a good recording of that show, or there were two. I think there were two, and someone actually had a 4-track reel-to-reel recording going for that show. I think there's a True West. There was one where True West played on the bill of one of those. I get them mixed up, so I'm not sure if it was that night or a different one. And a friend of ours is interested in mastering that and putting it out. It's a good live recording.
Yes, wonderful.
Nice.
Okay, so after Moonhead, Roger, you start having some lineup changes. Joseph leaves, and you get a new bass player. I think maybe you had 2 more bass players. Am I right on that?
Yeah. Well, Steve Tesluk, who played on the first 2 records, left the band after that. He was kind of frustrated because he was actually a guitar player playing bass, and he contributed a lot. I mean, there's some like really great bass lines that he contributed. Definitely. And we had just finished making Moonhead, and it turned out so well, and we were really excited about it. And then he told us that he was leaving, and so that I was kind of shocked. And John Von Felt replaced him. And John Von Felt was from Denver originally, but he was living in LA and playing in a couple bands around there. I can't remember exactly how we made contact with him. I think Lisa Fancher was trying to put the word out in various ways. and he came out. He actually moved to Davis and joined the band and did tons of touring with us. He and Joe Becker didn't get along, and on tour things kind of started to disintegrate at one point. And we decided we needed Joe was having trouble in the band and on tour and stuff, and so we decided to replace Joe and found Matt Abarisk, who was also an LA area drummer and photographer, and he was like, his style was different than Joe's. He was very powerful, and it really sort of pushed our live shows into another level of volume and energy and stuff. So that was good.
But Joe and John both are on the recording, right? Of In the Spanish Cave.
Let's see. That's the third record.
Yep.
Yeah, Joe and John are on that. Yeah.
Last July I bought some Opium and he says, you know that was a once-year brand. Every time I spark it to erase the scent of your sadistic man.
How was it recording the record? Were they okay in the studio to record this
Yeah.
album?
Yeah, there was just like the pressures of touring, I think. Yeah, it's funny, Guy and I were very much conscious of the fact that, turnover in a band is not a good thing. You don't have that, cohesive thing where you're like, we're all in this together and we've been doing it since we were kids, sort of feeling. So it was, I don't know if I'd say regrettable, but yeah, I mean, I do wish that we had managed to keep the original unit together, in retrospect.
Yeah. Well, like you say, it's
exactly.
hard to tour. You guys are in a van and you're probably sharing one hotel room, and if that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that feeling.
Yeah. Did you guys share beds, like in one hotel room? Who was your bed mate?
Oh, you had to either share beds or take turns on the floor, and and a lot of times the floor of a Motel 6 is not a place you want to lay down.
Keep that in mind, Soraya and Jeff. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't very glamorous. Touring in Europe was much better. We were treated with respect in Europe.
Wow.
In that we got proper hotel rooms and meals, and yeah, so we enjoyed Europe a lot more than the States, just because it was just, it was more comfortable, it was more exotic, the food was better, and
right.
People were enthusiastic, and that shows were bigger and all that stuff.
Roger, did you do multiple tours in Europe?
Yeah, we toured quite a lot. Probably we'd go to, between Moonhead and the end of the band, we'd go to Europe at least twice a year, and usually for like 3 months at a time or so.
Wow.
And it started with the Moonhead record had come out, and suddenly Lisa calls us and says, "There's a guy in Italy that wants to bring you to Italy." And we had, before we had been to Europe at all, and so we were like excited about that prospect, and we did a week-long trip in Italy, and when we got there, we discovered that we were rock stars in Italy, and like the record had like getting lots of radio play.
Wow.
And we found ourselves on a bill with X and Billy Bragg.
Wow.
And 10,000 Maniacs at this like big outdoor festival.
Nice.
And we played in like public parks with several thousand people and stuff. And so this was a big shock for us. And And so the Italian promoter who booked the tour continued to work with us, and he said, "Well, I'll bring you over again for an actual European tour." But that was like, it was like us packed into a Volkswagen
Yes.
Vanagon with tiny little amplifiers.
Yes.
And we made it into Germany and all the way into Norway and stuff, and that was our first experiences in Europe. And then we made it. We didn't make it to England until like the third time over, and then we started being booked by Paperclip out of Holland, and then there was the Soviet tour, which was this bizarre circumstance that deserves talking about.
Yeah. How many
ready.
dates was that, and what kind of vehicle and accommodations were going on there?
How much time do we have? Let's see. It was so the Italian promoter Paolo Bedini in Rome was friendly with friends of his, worked in the sort of Ministry of Arts of Italy or something, and they were involved in some sort of cultural exchange with Russia, with Moscow, where some Russian artists and musicians had come to Rome and performed and stuff, and then they were going to reciprocate and send Italians to Russia. And so Paolo decided to hijack this process and put us in the mix. And even though we're an American band, and so he arranged this, and we were there for like 3 weeks. We flew to Moscow. The Russians were somewhat surprised that a rock band from America was in the mix, and they were looking at our passports and squinting. And we stayed in some weird hotel, and we played at this like theater with like high society folks in the audience with like minks on and stuff, and it was broadcast on Soviet national television, and it was all quite surreal.
Yeah.
And then they put us on a train, this rickety wooden train that went down to Tbilisi, Georgia, and we played at the Opera House of Tbilisi, Georgia for like 4 nights in a row. To a packed audience through the strangest PA ever made, and these strange, like Polish amplifiers, and then the Armenian earthquake hit and shook the whole town, and we were stuck there for a few days, and then we flew to Lithuania and played in Vilnius and Kaunas, and finally got back to Rome, and it was all quite strange, but really, fun. We by the time we got back to Rome, they kept us there like a week or 2 longer than they said it was going to be, and so all of our flights were gone, and it was almost Christmas. It was 1988, and we were stuck in Rome, and because we couldn't find a flight home. And then we finally got booked on Pan Am 103, and we were all set to go when we could not find a connection because Pan Am 103 was going to New York, and we needed a connection to San Francisco, and we couldn't find one, so we canceled our reservations at the last minute. So it was a very crazy trip, and we finally made it home from that. Thought we were going to die numerous times.
Yeah.
Guy almost got arrested by the Moscow police for urinating in public. We had this evening in Tbilisi where the locals like had us over for dinner, and we were already way too drunk on this strange green vodka that they like make in the underground on the black market, and they had us in this super traditional dinner that was all very nice, but it involved toasting with a giant horn filled with wine. You had to get up and make a toast and like chug the entire horn of wine, which was like a bottle of wine.
Wow.
And we were already way too drunk, and everybody started vomiting, and and chaos ensued, and people like ran and panicked and ran, and it was a very strange trip.
Wow.
Yeah, and we found ourselves in weird places like that. We also went to Hungary and Budapest, and this was all during the Soviet era. And,
Wow.
so it was pretty strange.
What an experience.
A lot of fun. Yeah, and then we tried to concentrate on Germany and England and Scandinavia after that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Man, I'm having a hard time recovering from that, Roger.
That's the highly condensed
I
version.
feel like
That's
I feel
hard.
like I was on the tour, and I'm not. Yeah. Okay. So
Probably some.
yeah. Okay. So the RCA deal happens now. How does that affect you, or does it at all? Are you still dealing with just Frontier, and then they're just distributing? RCA is just distributing the records.
Yeah, mostly. RCA was pretty hands off, and I'd say if anything, it was a negative because at that time most self-respecting indie underground bands were very anti big label, including the distributors like Rough Trade in Europe essentially did not carry major label material. Like in Germany, it was like the mark of the beast, and you got you got pushed aside. So we ended up selling less in Europe than we did on the previous record, I think. So, and they didn't really do us many favors as far as like infusing a bunch of money for advertising or other promotion and stuff. It was just we got to say, hey, I'm on a major label. But yeah, and it didn't really affect us very much. And we actually were spending less on our recording. The fourth album was recorded with Tom Mallon in San Francisco, and in his studio, which was less expensive than what we had been doing. Yeah.
Sack Full of Silver, 1990.
I am feeling just a little down. Nothing I can wrap reasons around. I can't ignore it if I look real hard. Make perfect triangles out of every few stars.
And that sort of grew out of our relationship with American Music Club. We'd become, friends with those guys on label mates and played a lot of shows together. And Tom was just a really gifted engineer and recordist. And I really like that record. That record, I don't know if it's my favorite, but I was really happy with how it came out.
Roger, your one co-write on the album has an odd name. It's not even really a name. It's a shape.
Yep.
So the triangle song.
Yes.
So why the triangle song?
Why did I get the co-write? Just, I think, like I say, Guy, obviously it's a Guy Kaiser song. And it was just sort of a matter of like, which song did Roger contribute, most to
Oh, okay.
in this batch, sort of thing.
So is he throwing you a bone?
Yeah, pretty much, I'd say.
Do you?
But I mean, just like I say, it was kind of the Guy Kaiser band as far as that goes. Obviously, we were all proud of our contributions musically.
Yeah.
But it was a bit arbitrary, the songwriting credits, because it was more like, okay, I'm not gonna have a blanket, Guy Kaiser only,
Right.
Songwriting credits. Yeah.
Understood.
We should mention that's before Prince, you having that just symbol, yeah.
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 You were ahead of the.
I don't know. Yeah, I figured what year he did that. But yeah, I like that lyric a lot. I'm kind of a sucker for guys more poetic lyrics. He'd really get in these landscape, geography driven, lyrics and stuff. Really nice stuff.
Yeah. So I guess we're to the kind of the end. Like how does the band kind of decide to break up, or does it just kind of fall apart? Or yeah, we have one more record there, but
yeah. Well, I think Guy was, and I don't want to speak too much for him, but essentially, Guy was is a very private, introverted person, and being a front man of a rock and roll band was difficult for him, just emotionally, and he was kind of struggling with it, and infusing himself with a lot of alcohol and like every show he'd have to sort of like get into a state of mind that was very taxing for him, and then there were some personal things going on, not so much between us, but love life things, and Triangle Song is a good so at some point, he started a new relationship, and he was frustrated. He was definitely frustrated that the band wasn't more successful, and felt like the American tours, we were doing the same thing every time, or playing the same places. So there was some frustration with that. It had been 10 years, it's a long time.
Yeah.
And he just did a really significant shift, in his life. He wanted to change things up quite a lot. And so he just called me up one day and said he was quitting the band. And I said, well, that's inconvenient. If you quit, that pretty much ends the band.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just decided to call it quits. And then, so the final tour, I managed to talk him into doing the final tour. And of course we did a live album of the final show, and that's the one that got away, that record. And so I'm really happy that that happened, because that live record is the band at that point, and like everything we had come to as far as our live performance goes. And it really sounds like how the band sounded live, and it's 2 hours, plus of plowing through all the material. So
Roger, the understanding was that was going to be the final tour. You knew it.
Yeah, it was all preconceived, as a final tour. It was a short tour. In June, I turned 30, we played at Roskilde in Denmark, and the Reading Festival.
So this was 91 or 92?
92,
92,
by
okay.
that time, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
92. Yeah, so it was just like a couple of weeks of some good gigs, and then that culminating show in Belgium where we did the recording.
So that had to have
So
been,
it was nice to be able to plan the whole ending of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, hey, it's quite a career, Roger. I mean, 10 years, 5 albums, EP, compilation, double live album. I mean, all the,
yeah,
it's amazing.
and a fantastic discography. I mean, the entire discography is great. And then Frontier decides to reissue it on 180 gram, and my buddy Paul Dugray mastered it and did a masterful job of.
Yeah.
So how were you pleased with the reissue campaign?
Yeah, and of course the most important thing is the colors.
Yes.
Yeah.
2 different colors, 2 of each title.
Different colors.
Yeah.
But no, I think they sound really good. And it was in the 80s, and I don't want to rag on Rainbow Records, but I was always frustrated with the quality just because our test pressings would always sound better than the product.
Okay.
And some of the product was not that good, and maybe I was expecting too much, like Japanese master pressings or something. But this is better. This is it's a better quality vinyl. It's a better pressing. It's and then the mastering sounds great. Definitely can hear a lot of detail, and it's fun to listen to the records with that much detail, because it sparks memories of actually recording this stuff.
Nice.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that little part.
Nice.
Sort of thing. So yeah, I was happy that Lisa decided to do that.
So Roger, I'm a vinyl nerd. I love vinyl records, and I have a couple walls of record albums. And typically I like to go for the original pressings, but I'm definitely going to recommend, if anybody is not familiar with Thin White Rope and you're going to invest some money, go with the reissues in this case. Typically I say go with the original pressings, but in this case, the remastered versions are fantastic.
No, and they're highly affordable. They're like $16. Like they're
they're 16 bucks.
Yeah. So highly affordable in this day and age. So
yeah.
Roger, you continue to play music. It's not like Thin White Rope, but just tell us just a little bit about
it's very different.
What you do now.
Yeah, well, after the band broke up, I wanted to do something totally different. So I had a band in the 90s called the Acme Rocket Quartet, and it was an instrumental 4-piece, surprisingly, and mostly my music, but sort of a collaboration, kind of surf, jazz, rock hybrid of stuff. And we made three CDs, and it was all, I got into recording. I bought some basic equipment and an 8-track, and I did all the recording myself. I sold off my solid body guitars and just got a crappy old archtop, and did like this pseudo jazz stuff. We sort of got lumped into the lounge scene in San Francisco at the time, and so we played at like Bruno's and Bimbo's once, and like big warehouse parties and things like that. But the band didn't tour at all. None of us were keen on touring at the time. So we made 3 CDs, and those are on Bandcamp, Acme Rocket Quartet. And then I got pretty into bluegrass, and old time, and it's just nice to be able to play acoustic instruments, when you're in your house with your children and stuff. And actually Guy became a banjo player, and we actually had a bluegrass band together for a while, around 2008 or something. So we did a demo. I actually had hopes that we'd pursue that, but one of the band members, I was playing mandolin and Guy was playing banjo, and I do have a demo recording, but it's not super good quality. And then the guitar player moved away, and we never managed to get it back together. And then all of a sudden, Guy was, deciding he didn't want to perform again. And recently, I play in like sort of a honky tonk classic country roadhouse kind of band called Mike Blanchard and the Californios, and we do the beer circuit basically,
Nice.
all the brew pubs and stuff around the area, and that's a lot of fun. And I'm pursuing becoming a solo guitarist. And I made a CD that's on Bandcamp that's solo acoustic guitar. And I was just getting out and performing during that before the lockdown. So I haven't done a whole lot of that yet. I got out just before the lockdown. I was starting to get out and play and sort of guest, playing with people here and there. And I did a show with Russ in LA, or just a couple songs actually, and that was fun. Yeah, so I'd love to get out and play more. I'm kind of envious of bands of the '80s that have reformed and are actually able to tour and do that sort of stuff.
Maybe it could still happen, Roger. Thin White Rope reunion, maybe.
Yeah, well, no one's been able to convince Guy.
Yeah, well, maybe it sounds like he goes in and out of wanting to play music, so you never know, right?
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
So Roger, as soon as he sees this episode of Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme, it's all gonna flip. It's gonna be like, yes, let's do this.
Yes.
Expect a phone call next week.
Right.
Guy's gonna be on the phone. Come on, Roger, let's take this on the road. Let's give Joe a call.
Wonderful. And we should tell people to join the Thin White Rope fan page on Facebook, because Roger will occasionally put up a clip of him playing, and
yeah, absolutely.
Roger's an amazing player. So I know you're right here, Roger, but yeah, Roger's an amazing player.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roger, for taking time to walk us through the history of the band. It was only a decade, but it was a very impactful career for the band, at least for me. It all started off with seeing that Frontier label on the back of Exploring the Axis, and all the records are fantastic.
Thank goodness for Lisa Fancher and Frontier Records.
Yeah, we had her on the show, and she's very supportive of the band even to this day.
Oh yeah, she doesn't remaster everything, so the fact that she did the Thin White Rope shows the love there. So
absolutely. Yep, Thin White Rope and Christian Death. There you go.
Right.
Maybe Circle Jerks.
Adolescence.
That's about it, though.
Suicidal tendencies. That's the. That's the.
Oh wait, the list is getting longer.
I know.
It's probably only about 5 though. It's a small
waiting
list.
on the Choir Invisible remaster.
Right.
Probably not going to happen. All right, Roger. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. We really appreciate it.
Sure, it was fun.
Thanks, Roger.
And keep us
Nice
posted on anything new, please. Especially after you get the call from Guy.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll see you in Davis, Roger. I'll see you in Davis.
I'll see you in Davis.
Okay.
Or Harlow's, Sacramento.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh,
Ronnie, thank you for
gone.
making that happen.
Of course.
Wow.
Yeah. Thanks for having me along, guy. I don't mean to keep crashing these things, but thanks for having me along.
Oh, no.
That'll be. Did you press record, Jeff?
I did. It shows recording at the top.
Okay. Because I didn't do the authorization. Like you know what I mean? Usually it tells me to.
Oh.
Anyway. Okay.
Soraya, it is showing as recording on your side, right?
Yeah, no, it's showing as recording here.
All right.
So, and if anything, let me see, what are some of the things we learned? First of all, the walk through the 5 albums was really interesting to me, and Guy seems to be much more enigmatic now than when we started recording.
Oh yeah.
I think just hearing a little more about him, he just seems more like a puzzle.
I think it's probably a healthy move for him to step away, it sounds like to me. So we don't want like an Ian Curtis thing, right? We don't want something to happen where it's just so unhealthy for a person to do something like this. And then so it sounds like there is a time for certain people to step away for their own sanity's sake, and maybe for Guy that might be the case.
Yeah, well, there's that, and there's also the fact that he, all his work is that it's intact, right? He didn't make a
Right.
weird, crappy solo album or have a half-ass band that he tried to, you know what I mean? Like it's
He never made The Elder, is what you're trying to
He know-
say.
he didn't make his Elder, which, God, now don't put it in those terms, Jeff. We could use his Elder, but yeah, no, you could,
Yes.
like I was talking about seeing them live. It was Guy was very intense. Like he wasn't a, hey, thanks for coming, you guys, kind of thing. I guess you can see it on YouTube and some live clips, including that naked show.
Yeah, I've seen all of those, but I never got to see them in
Yeah.
person live.
And
So I'm glad that you had that opportunity and were able to share your experience.
Yeah, and Guy's doing those intense, like vibrato-y, that's Guy,
Yeah.
and Roger generally is doing the kind of, dare I say, clean kind of stuff behind, though they have their moments about doing feedback, like he said. And
Yeah.
it really was quite a guitar team, and like, as you can imagine, just unbelievable to watch.
Wow.
And yeah, Soraya, that original sound, right, Soraya? I mean, no one with that. It's a cliche to almost say that, like they sound like nobody, but nobody sounds like Thin White Rope.
But see, and then when Roger added that detail about they came to a point of wanting to kind of create this sound together, that they were finding complementary amps.
Yeah.
That was a detail that I don't think I could have ever imagined, that they were just looking for other ways to kind of expand the sound that they created together. I found that really fascinating.
Smart people in a band. I know it doesn't usually happen that way.
And I will add, for anybody that that Thin White Rope might be new to, I doubt that there's anybody of our listeners that are in that category. So I bought all of the reissues in one sitting from Lisa, and she said since I bought all 5 that she would give me a deal. So she gave me a great deal on all 5. Ronnie, you mentioned that they're already well priced.
Yeah.
But she knocked off a lot when I bought all 5 of them. So I don't know if that's an option for everybody, but
I was gonna say,
there's that.
you might not want to publicize that.
I know. But there is this too. So there is this
Oh, that's right.
compilation. So,
Is that
so when
Spanish
World's-
only? Yeah, that's an import, right?
Yeah, it's actually put out on Frontier.
Okay.
But it might be a good place to start if you don't want to jump in and get all 5. So it's got something from all of their releases. So it's when Worlds Collide might be a good place for somebody to start if they just want to start with one.
But if they're gonna start with one and they start with a real record, get this one.
Moonhead.
That's the one.
Yeah. That's
the
the
one.
I mean, I don't want to play favorites here. I mean, the first 3 are all really great. And
So are any of your records signed, Ronnie? You have to see them.
yeah.
multiple times.
They are. I'm sorry I don't have them handy, but yeah, my first 3 records are signed.
Wow.
And I'm sorry I don't have them handy. They're elaborately signed too. Like they Thin White Rope didn't just write a signature, like I do, and just be done with it. And just be done with it. Yeah, they say funny things. Yeah. So
Nice.
but
Very nice.
but yeah, lucky enough to have seen them. And
Awesome.
yeah, one of my favorite bands. So thanks for having me around, you guys.
Yeah, we've been wanting to do this for a while, and we didn't go too much into it, but as Soraya had mentioned, they often get thrown into this Paisley Underground umbrella. I don't know why. I don't. Maybe it's the Steve Wynn connection. Maybe with the
Davis
It's a Davis
connection.
connection, and then Joseph Beck. We really should all talk to Joseph Becker too, because he's been in a lot of anyway.
Yep.
That's a
So-
given. But yeah, it's a Davis thing, and these guys all played with each other. And like you said, he was in a band with Steve, the drummer of True West, when he was in high school. And yeah, that Davis Sacramento scene back then, it was
Wow.
gave us some great things. Yeah.
Yep.
And then that Island Records deal that didn't pan out
Right,
for
right,
all
right.
the bands. but only except for Long Riders.
And Rain Parade, right? So, Crash and
Yeah.
Dream. So yeah.
There's enough of links that kind of draw them in, but they don't sound like anybody connected with the scene. And and Guy's vocals are just they're just I think Roger said a unique sound, but it's beyond unique. It's a completely different imprint.
There's much more to Sacramento music than Tesla and cake. All right, everybody. So.
That's a good way to close this out.
Yeah.
Well put. Well put.
All right. Well,
All right. So, and I just need to point out to those of you who are audio only, you need to go see the YouTube, because we've been graced the entire time by a poster of David Lee Roth doing this aerial splits in the background. So I don't think there's any more auspicious occasion than
thanks
this
for
one.
noticing, Soraya. It's there every time, but maybe it's more noticeable sometimes. And again,
I completely noticed it today.
All right.
I usually do
and I'm
something
sorry
different,
for
but anyway.
this movement too that it happens, but whatever. It's kind of fun.
Hey,
It's not
okay.
I'm not doing it. So yeah.
It's perfect.
It's your,
But yeah, this was great. And Ronnie, we can't
No,
thank
no,
you
no.
enough.
absolutely.
Thank you.
In all seriousness, thank you, Ronnie.
No.
Really, really appreciate it. So, Ronnie, do you have a sign off for us today?
No.
That works.
Yeah, that's my
All right,
sign off.
Soraya.
All right, y'all. I'll see you
Thank
soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Sorry, I'm trying.
It's all right.
That's okay.
Damn it. How come it's not? There we go. Bye. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Jeff, this was a really good episode, and I can't thank Roger Kunkel for coming
Yep.
on.
Yep. Absolutely.
I can't thank him
Yeah,
enough.
I totally agree. Yeah.
That was really good. And thank you again to Ronnie Barnett.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Woo! All right, Jeff, I think we need to just end it right here.
If we don't, I'm going to be urinating in the streets.
Don't do it. Triangle song, everybody. You need it. I'm going to be out of mi gente.
Groove on, Paisley people.
No.